Hello, everybody. I am Laura Casas. I am a PhD student in the Lyman-alpha Forest Working Group within DESI. And today I'm going to give a brief overview of one of the supporting papers of the BAO batch for the second data release of DESI. In particular, I'm going to talk about the validation of the Lyman-alpha Forest BAO analysis using synthetic datasets. So, Lyman-alpha forest is a series of absorption lines in the spectra of quasars due to neutral hydrogen. When the light passes through the hydrogen, it gets absorbed. And looking at the redshift and depth of these absorption lines, you can obtain information about the placement and density of the neutral hydrogen. And looking at different Lyman-alpha forests in different lines of sight, you can create a map of the neutral hydrogen in the universe. So Lyman-alpha forests are very exciting tracers since they open a window to the high redshift universe, given that quasars are at high redshifts. And using them, we can measure the BAO peak at different redshifts, which provides information about dark energy. And we have two ways of measuring the peak. The first one is what we refer to as the autocorrelation function, which consists in correlating absorption in two different quasar spectra as a function of angular and line of sight separation. You can see this in the picture here. And below, I have plotted a stack of autocorrelation functions from MOX, and you can see the BAO peak at 100 megaparsecs over H. The second way we have of measuring this is what we call the cross-correlation function. In this case, instead of correlating absorption between two different forests, we correlate the absorption in a particular pixel in a spectra with the density of quasars around it. You can see a plot of the stack of cross-correlation functions of MOX to the right. And in this case, instead of a BAO peak, we have a BAO dip. This is because the more absorption we have, the less flux we get. But the cross-correlation function is a perfectly valid way of measuring the BAO peak, just as the autocorrelation function. So DESI represents a major step forward in the precise measurement of BAO from Lyman-alpha forests. In EVOS, which was a part of SDDSS4, the dataset had 200,000 forests. In DESI DR1, this number went up to 400,000 forests. And in DESI DR2, we have 800,000 forests, which makes it the largest dataset of its kind, which is great. And it means we have a really high precision. Actually, the precision of the isotropic BAO measurement from Lyman-alpha is of 0.7%. But it also means that it is crucial to study in detail any potential contaminants. And in this context, MOX are essential for testing the analysis pipeline and assessing the impact of potential systematic errors. So given that the volume of this is very big, we need these MOX, the boxes of these MOX, to be very large, of around 1 gigaparsec. And given that we have very high precision, it means we need many of these boxes. This means that using hydro simulations is too computationally expensive, and for this reason, we use Gaussian MOX. Now, it is true that these are not the most realistic MOX, but given that the BAO peak is at large scales, using linear theory is a good first order approximation. So in DESI DR1, we use two types of MOX, 50 Saclay and 100 Lia-Colore. Both of these Gaussian, as I just mentioned, and their main weakness is that they didn't have the correct nonlinear broadening of the BAO peak. So due to nonlinear growth, the BAO peak is actually smeared, which means that the uncertainties are higher. So the weakness of these mocks was that their uncertainties were lower than the ones we would obtain in data. In DESI DR2, we used again Sacle mocks, but in this case 100 instead of 50, and we used 300 colore quasi-linear mocks, which are a type of Lia colore mocks, still Gaussian, but with a couple of improvements. The first improvement we did was bettering the quasar clustering at small scales. So the way we test the quasar clustering in our mocks is comparing it to the quasar autocorrelation function of the abacus and body simulations plotted by the black solid line here. The way these mocks work is that we create a box with a matter density field, and then we populate it with quasars following a specific biasing model. The Lia colore mocks from DR1 used an exponential biasing model. I have plotted the autocorrelation function of one of these mocks in yellow, and you can see that the quasar clustering at small scales is overestimated in comparison to the abacus result. In the colore quasi-linear mocks, instead, we used a linear biasing model with a threshold, as shown by the expression here. And I've plotted the autocorrelation function of quasars from the colore quasi-linear mocks in blue. And you can see that it's in better agreement with the abacus results. So we were quite happy about this. And then the second improvement was that we changed the input power spectrum with which we initialize our mocks. The Lia colore mocks used a linear input power spectrum, while the colore quasi-linear mocks use a quasi-linear input power spectrum, as shown by the expression here, where we add a correction to the BAO peak. So now in these plots, you can see the data uncertainty of DESI DR2 in the dashed black lines. You can see the uncertainties in the BAO measurements from mocks which use a quasi-linear input power spectrum in blue, and from mocks which use a linear input power spectrum in green. Clearly, the blue histograms are in much better agreement with the data uncertainty. So it was great to see that this trick worked. So once we make the mocks, the next step is to measure the correlation function and perform a fit of the stack of correlations of the mocks. Here I'm showing the correlation functions of the stack of the 300 colore quasi-linear mocks, which you can see as the dots. Then the fits are the solid lines. The gray areas are the scales not used in the fits. The mu is the cosine between the wave vector and the line of sight, and the shaded regions are the data uncertainty. So you can see that the fit is very good. This means that the model captures very well the correlations measured, and we were very happy to see this since the group had actually made some improvements to the model, which are explained in Eric Armando's YouTube video on the Lyman-alpha BAO analysis. And these are the results we obtained from the fits. So the BAO alphas describe how the observed BAO scale compares to the expected one in both the line of sight and transverse directions. In mocks, we expect the alphas to be equal to 1 or at least consistent with 1, since the cosmology used to measure them is the same that we used to create them. Another goal is that any systematic biases are within 1/3 of the uncertainty of the data. I've plotted this 1/3 of the uncertainty of the data as the black dashed contour. And you can see in blue that the results of the coloric quasi-linear mocks are within this threshold, but right on the edge. The results of the Saclay mocks are actually outside the threshold, and the combined results are on the edge. Just as a reminder, the black dashed contour we were seeing was 1/3 of the uncertainty. All these biases are actually well within the 1 sigma uncertainty of data. But the good thing is that we actually understand where these biases come from. In a previous study, by Samantha Yules and other authors in 2022, they showed that the addition of redshift estimation errors can cause small yet significant biases in the BAO measurements. We actually already explored this in DESI DR1, but we did not add it to the baseline of the MOX analysis. But we thought it was very important to add it this time since these redshift estimation errors are actually present in our data. The good thing is that this study also showed that most of the contamination comes from quasars that are close to each other. So following this idea, we decided to perform 3 different types of analysis. The first one is what we refer to as the baseline analysis, which is the one I just showed, which has this redshift errors contamination. The second one is what we called the no sigma set analysis, and it's exactly the same as the baseline analysis, but without the redshift errors. And finally, we made no closed pairs analysis, which is exactly the same as the baseline one, but we removed the closed pairs of quasars, hence taking away most of the contamination. And you can actually see that this does reduce the bias. And it's actually a really cool analysis because you can perform it in data and quantify how much these redshift errors are impacting your results. So you can see that for the coloric quasi-linear mocks, this alternative analysis of no closed pairs removes the bias pretty much completely. In the case of the Saclay mocks, it doesn't remove it completely, but it makes the measurement be within the 1/3 of a sigma threshold we wanted. So for the purposes of the analysis, it is good. And finally, I just wanted to mention that we also did fits individually to all the mocks to validate that the reported uncertainties are representative of the scatter between realizations. So here you can see the BAO residuals from the coloric quasi-linear mocks in blue, from the Saclay mocks in red, and you can see that they follow a normal distribution, which is plotted by the black solid line. This means that the BAO errors are accurate and approximately Gaussian. So just as a quick summary, I've mentioned that the Lyman-alpha forests are a powerful tracer to measure BAO at high redshifts. In order to validate the DESI DR2 BAO analysis, we made updates to both the mocks that we used and to the mock analysis. The most important updates in the mocks were the improvement of quasar clustering at small scales and the addition of a degree of nonlinear broadening of the BAO peak. And the most important update in the analysis was the addition of redshift estimation errors, which led to a small bias in the BAO measurements. But we have presented a method for evaluating the size of this contamination that we can perform on data. And we have shown that the residual bias is significantly smaller than our statistical uncertainty. And with this, we concluded that the BAO analysis was validated. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.